Welcome back to the Everyday Artisan. I'm Jackie, and today we're looking for a little bit of magic in the mundane, and we'll be making this sweet fairy chair. I'm committed to using crafting for my well-being, and when I go about my daily business, I like to look for the little things. This act of conscious connecting with my surroundings and pausing to be in the moment and see a situation as precious or unique is super easy when things are going well. It comes naturally to feel gratitude and the preciousness when things are going as I planned. But things don't always go as I planned. And sometimes fear, anxiety, irritation, sadness, grief can come in, and those feelings are part of the human experience too. But we don't want to dwell on those feelings too long for so many reasons. So it is in these moments that I try to find a little sparkle. As W.B. Yeats once wrote, "The world is full of magic things, waiting patiently for our senses to grow sharper." And when I commit to the act of noticing, even for a moment, these small things, I feel a shift of my attention. I see things that are often in the background that I don't normally pay attention to, and I disrupt my negative loop thinking. The smallest things in our environment can be utilized to do this. The sound of rain or birdsong in the morning, the taste of maple sugar on our tongue, the sight of the stars in the nighttime, or even the tiniest flower that grows along the path we've traversed 1,000 times. Such preciousness surrounds us all the time. And when I move my thoughts away, even for a moment, I find my stress is decreased, and delight, curiosity, wonder, and even reverence can take a front seat row for a little while. And this shift can get me out of my head and my body and connect me to the greater universe. I have a confession to make. When my kids were little, I encouraged them to believe in fairies in the forest and at the water's edge. It was fun. And I encouraged them to see the leaves and the stones and the rocks and the mosses and feel they were part of the woods too. The small scale of fairies is particularly suited for a closer look and imagination. And when we pick up a tidbit or two from the forest floor, it is really hard not to transform it into a tiny treasure. So let's go exploring. So you can see here, this is my box of collected driftwood, sticks, and barks are in here too. And I've got a little bag of stones in there over to the left. And whenever I'm like out and about, if I see something that really strikes me that would be perfect scale for fairy furniture, I pick it up, put it in my purse or bag, and take it on home. Here is my box of mosses, and most of these are gathered from our cottage forest. And I always bring them home, put them in the box, let them dry out. They are totally fine in small pieces. I have heard people put them in ovens to dry them out, but I've never done that, and I've never had any deterioration of any of my fairy furniture. I also have used store-bought in a pinch, and those are super useful as well. So if you can't get out to a forest and pick moss, go to the store. There, it's all there. So I've picked out my tools and materials that I want to use. I've got some mosses. I might use a shell in there somewhere, not sure yet. And this one's going to be a birch bark chair. You can see the birch bark there came from one of our fallen trees. And you can pick this up often on the side of the road. If I see an old birch bark fallen down on the side of the road, as long as it's a place where you can go and not be trespassing. And you can see there's our sweet fairy waiting for her chair. So I have an assortment of tools and glues for this. This is more intensive than other things, but I don't necessarily use all the tools. And when I first started making, all I used was a little pair of jewelry scissors and some sandpaper, and that was it, and a hot glue gun and some glue sticks, my soba, which I always like, and my toothpicks to use that. And that's pretty much it. Here's my sticks that I'm going to use for this one. It's always surprising the scale. People tend to want to make them quite thick, and sometimes like a bed or something might be appropriate for a thicker piece, but fairy scale is quite small. So again, I pick these up whenever I see something that looks like it would be useful in miniature scale. And often for the fairy furniture, I look for something with a straight edge and a curved edge because it makes very pretty arcs and stuff in the chairs. But you do need some good straight pieces as well for the legs. I always like to start by covering my work surface so I don't get any glue on it. So in this case, just putting a little bit of wax paper down, tape it. Even on an old picnic table like this, glue, you don't want to get glue on it. So we'll put that down, and I'm going to start with some cardboard. And I do not use measurements on this. Some people might say, oh, what are the measurements? I don't really use measurements. I'm going to take my seat. The seats want to be a little bigger than you think they would be for like a 6-inch fairy, which is life size. So I'm going to just cut, and I make it a little flared and use that as my base. Over the years, I have found that when I am cutting the little twigs for the legs in particular, it is nice to have a good straight cut on the end. And I started out just using these little clippers, but it kind of creates a squeezed piece. So I graduated to a little saw, and this is going to be 4 legs of about 1 inch, and they're a little shorter than you might think. So I kind of draw the saw, create a groove in there, and just keep going. Break it at some point, clip it at a little point. I use all kinds of clippers too. Do that. Start again. Find light pressure, and back and forth works better than hard pressure. Gonna break it. Trim it just a little bit. And again, the thing is, while the straighter edges are super useful, the truth is when we glue it on with the hot glue will create kind of a cushion, so it being perfectly straight is not completely critical. And again, I keep coming back to perfection is not the goal. Get. Oh, that one's a little bit funny. The other thing to remind when you get a funny piece that you go, oh, that doesn't look very good, you can cover it up with moss and glue, and it does 2 things. It strengthens the joint and it covers up any wonkiness. Got my 4. Let's see if this last one will fit right there. And there we go. I've got my 4 little pieces, and then I am going to get my little seat out, get rid of some of that, and it's 2-sided, so I'm going to use the underside as the bottom because the top side we're going to be covering up with moss and birch bark. So to have the underside have a cute little brown spot is probably better. Okay, so I'm just going to start gluing these on, and I'm going to put a dot on my cardboard. And one of the things I find with hot glue, hold it into place while it's drying. People think it's like a super quick grab, but I always find it's a little better if you hold it down for a second or so. Glue. Pop it on, hold it in place. Give that a second to dry, push that off to the side, and then we're going to put some cross pieces like that to help firm it up a little bit. You can see on the side here. And it gives a cute detail. If you ever look at chairs, they always have chair rails. And I wasn't fully aware of that. I think I'm going to use these two pieces for the back. So we're going to set those aside, and this piece should be good enough for my cross pieces. And again, this is a very small piece, so I'm just going to use a little one here, and one there, and two on the side. One. And again, I'm not super careful with the measurements. It's kind of like sculpting. You can adjust them later. So now I'm going to turn, check, pretty steady. Again, it's a fairy chair made out of twigs. So check that out. Okay, so we're going to turn on its side. I think I'm actually going to use these sides first, because see this little cute little sticky out thing? We'll put that there, put that there. Don't worry about that glue. It's going to be covered up with moss. The more important thing is to get a nice secure hold. And then this one is going to go at the same spot on this side. One and two. There. And then we've got our front and back rail. Going to go lower on this one. One. Tuck it around. Then the back one. This one might fit in the back. Yeah, that's cute. Oh, is it going to go lower? We'll go lower, like we did on the front. All right, so there we go. We've got our base done. Pull away our little extra threads, and now we're going to work on the back. I lost some footage, but I wanted you to see how I constructed the back of the chair with two uprights and a couple cross pieces to firm it up. Those are glued right onto the base, which you can see there. The base has been cut out of a piece of birch bark that was cut to the same shape and glued on top. And then a wee little piece put right where the seat reaches the back. This is both decorative and gives us a little more structure to hold it firm. I like to take my mosses and pull them apart. You can see here this green moss has a nice green top but brown bottom, and for this one I don't want to use the brown bottom, so I just pull some off, pull that little brown stuff away, put it in my pile. I've got some soft green moss. When I'm harvesting my moss, I make sure I always harvest it from areas that have very large patches, so I'm not, depleting an area. And the box of moss that you saw, I harvested probably 3 or 4 years ago, and it's been plenty. I mean, we use so little. Okay, so I'm going to use a little bit of hot glue in here, and then I just pick up a little bit of moss, pop it in there, add a little bit of, use my tweezers in there, just keep going till I like the look of it. And again, there's no real recipe for this, and they all come out different every single time. But this extra glue and moss can act also as a little bit of reinforcement. It's getting a little bit too funky. Pull that apart. Pop it in there. While I'm here, I'm going to do this side. Get a little bit of glue on there. And I just do little bits at a time. Press that there. Goes pretty far over. And see, I've got all that moss there. Let that dry for a second. I'll come back and I'll pull it off. Going around to the back, we've got this little spot in here. Get a little bit of glue in there. I'm going to put a little bit of this white moss back in there. And again, I kind of overdo it, stuff it in there in the beginning, and then I pick away at the end. A little more in here. And maybe I'll use a little bit of this in here. Press it in. Use my tweezers, really get it tucked in there. Oh. Sometimes your tweezers can get hot glue on them and then the moss sticks to the hot glue. Go back, trim off some of this. Trim off this. So pretty. So of course, hot glue has that wonderful stringy quality as well, so I'm always pulling out the strings. I think I'm going to put this little shell right in here. Or should I put it right there? I'm going to put it right there. My little Milo is super vocal today. Oh, so pretty. Finish the front and the sides here, covering that area up. And it looks crazy at this point. So much going on. Right. There you go. Then we just need tiny bits at the four corners and we're done. So here we are. We've got all of our mosses on. I see no obvious evidence of glue. If I do, I trim or I pick away. And there we go. Put this away. You can see it better.